I don't know who you think I am.
A big lying fart face.
And a monster hunter. When we first meet James Sunderland, he is a haunted and morose man. But as we follow his journey through the horrors of Silent Hill, we come to recognize he's a straight killer. Monsters lurk throughout the town, with every one of them posing a threat to James as he searches for his wife Mary. But just how many does he take down until he finds the truth?
What's a big dum-dum like you doing here anyway?
I just told you, you little Sorry, I got a little carried away there. Let's start at the beginning with James washing those dirty hands of his. He stares into the mirror at himself, simply in disbelief at how he's as handsome as he is sad. He leaves the shitter and looks over the foggy landscape right outside of Silent Hill. He's been through a lot, with his wife passing away tragically, but there is just zero excuse to park like this, dude. He leaves his car behind and saunters along the nature trail, admiring the thick as fuck fog until he runs into Angela. His sudden arrival startles her, prompting an apology from James before he asks for directions. She points him towards the town but warns him that dangers await. James exudes that honey badger energy though and aims to go anyway. They're both searching for someone and wish each other luck as James departs and runs into an awfully familiar location. These glimpses of the past serve as fun Easter eggs for fans of the original, but also hint at something far more sinister. A popular theory is that James Sunderland has been repeatedly going through Silent Hill in a loop.
It's not a loop. It's a spiral.
You may be onto something, Alan, and it's more or less confirmed to be true in this game as we come across various corpses of James and artifacts left behind by previous versions. But we'll be looking at this version of James and won't count any other kills from previous attempts. He spots a trail of blood and a twitchy figure in the fog, so he follows it until he finds a new radio he can pawn off once he's back home. As soon as he picks it up, the first enemy, known as the lying figure, wants to tussle. James yanks a board from the nearby window and uses the nails on the other end to repeatedly bash the monster until he tallies his first kill. That effectively opens the floodgates, as James can now explore the town with the means to defend himself, fighting off 6 additional lying figures and crushing his first creeper beneath his foot, Isaac Clarke style. He checks out some apartments off of Saul Street, but it's apparent right away he won't be leasing here. It's filled with bugs and violently rowdy tenants. Shit, even the nearby music store doesn't offer any peace, just more death. He dirties those hands up again by going elbow deep within the borderline, only to come away with a jukebox button. He beelines it for Neely's bar and fixes the jukebox, but music cannot be played without payment, so now he's relegated to finding an easy enough store to rob, which turns into a heavier crime when he bashes yet another monster to death to get a measly quarter. He takes a shiny new coin directly to the bar and plays some music that triggers his memory. Rosewater Park was a location they spent a lot of time in when they vacationed here. So with that lead, he intends to head that way. But then the jukebox snaps that record in half abruptly to bring the music to an end and bring James back down to earth so he can't maintain a single good memory for too long. Once outside, he finds a key to the Woodside Apartments, which triggers a weather event that sends high winds and hella monsters his way. There's far too many to contend with though, so he runs along Cat Street until he finds the entrance to the apartments. It's not long until he realizes he needs a source of light in this dingy place, and luckily there's one right next to Mary's clothes. Wait, what? Oh shit! James beats down his first mannequin with fervor before he reads about the antagonist from 2 games ahead of his own. 2 violent kills later, James reaches for a key laying just within his reach on the other side of some bars. But then the worst monster of all stomps on his jerkin hand and runs away while mimicking Nelson. Her fuckery is only a minor inconvenience, however, since James picks them up just a few minutes later and earns a killing spree by stopping 2 creepers and 3 lying figures dead in their tracks. The second level of this shithole provides a new killing device and arms James with a handgun. Soon after, he finds a dead James from who knows how many runs ago and can't bear to uncover him and learn the truth. So he gains some XP by smashing and bashing more monsters, as well as adding his first kill using the handgun. While he navigates the condemned complex and every other area throughout Silent Hill, he comes across photographs, which is new to the remake. They have numbers on the back and show various locations or items. During recording of this video, Reddit user Dale Robinson cracked the code. Counting things in the photos and using the phrases at the bottom, the message spells out, "You've been here for 2 decades." Is this more confirmation of the loop theory, or just a fun message from Bloober Team to the fans? James goes up another level and hears puking coming from within the bathroom. but notices another dead body in the kitchen. He finds Eddie in the bathroom, and before James even says a word, Eddie immediately swears he didn't kill the guy a few feet away. Seems like bullshit, but James only bashes monsters, so he remains calm here and recommends Eddie get the hell out of this place. Eddie asks James to accompany him and seems really hurt when he declines. He continues filling up the contents of that toilet, and James moves on to kill more of the residents within this apartment complex. All this physical activity makes a man thirsty, and this six-pack of juice? Wait, dude, what the fuck? That was a waste of some perfectly good sugar water. After spending time gathering up all the coins in this building, James is so rich he gets to choose which coin he wants to keep, which has an impact on the ending. He's given a key to room 201, and inside he meets Silent Hill's most famous resident. A mannequin is thrown into the room, and James peers around the corner to see another getting physically assaulted. Those mannequins are easily the most hated enemy in the game, so let's hide in the nearby closet and watch. After that's over, old Pyramid Head shows off some sick moves, but James doesn't appreciate them very much and instead shoots him in the head, where the big-ass Iron Pyramid sits. Come on, dude. Pyramid Head has a fantastic sense of humor though, pretending James's puny shots hurt him, almost as if it's happened before. He realizes he's not welcome here and leaves, giving James the chance to cross over into the Blue Creek apartments. This level is probably the biggest step up from the original game. In what is the most forgettable section of the original Silent Hill 2, Bloober gives Blue Creek a facelift and turns it into an anxiety-laden section filled with plenty of kills to push James over 50. It also shows James at his most depraved as he crams his arm deep within this toilet filled with loads of crap. 4 enemies fall and are lucky for it, so they don't have to smell this dude. It's in this complex that James starts showing a complete disregard for his own well-being, willingly covering his arm in puke and jumping down holes. It brings him back to Angela, however, who was in a much more depressed state when he originally met her. She's absent-mindedly playing with a knife while lounging on the floor in front of a mirror. James recognizes something isn't quite right here and attempts to talk her down from whatever she might be planning, but she's not very receptive until she kind of snaps out of it and apologizes. James tries changing the subject to her mama, who is still nowhere to be found. He offers some help, asking if she lives in these apartments, but Angela just isn't sure. Realizing that's a bit strange, he wants to confirm Mama be in this town, which makes Angela freak out for a second, wondering how James can even know that. But she's here for a reason just like he is, and she quickly calms down before James shows her a photo of Mary and admits she's deceased.
Don't worry, I'm not crazy. At least I don't think so.
Yeah, okay, buddy. You're making her uncomfortable. Angela decides now is a good time to bail and declines James's offer to accompany her, but he can take the knife off her. After faking James out, she puts it down and hurries away, leaving him to his own devices yet again, which results in another kill. Soon after that, he happens upon a room absolutely loaded with moths, giving me flashbacks to the Great Miller Moth invasion of 2022. He continues slamming his fists into holes like a madman and finally unlocks the way out of here. But a certain fella he shot at earlier is there waiting and wants to give him a hard time. James plays Ring Around the Rosie with a pocket full of bullies until PH hits his cardio levels for the day and walks out the front door. James follows and things are real quiet until he crosses paths with that little girl who curb stomped his phalanges earlier. She doesn't really want to chat with him and suddenly darts away while telling James he never loved Mary in the first place. Bro just stands there in disbelief for a second before wandering off to Rosewater Park to find his wife. He meets Maria, who bears a remarkable resemblance to his late wife. He's obviously a bit freaked out by all this and pulls away when she attempts to touch him. She begins asking questions about why he's here and learns about the letter he got from Mary inviting him to their special place in Silent Hill. But the problem is he can't exactly recall where that is. Maria offers to help, knowing of a place nearby that a couple may call special. He doesn't really want to pair up with Maria, but she guilts him into it due to the monsters roaming the town. They leave the park and go across the street towards the motel, where Maria is attacked and subsequently saved to give James another kill. They walk up Nathan Avenue, and Maria's questions about Mary aggravate James to his core, resulting in a bit of old-fashioned ultraviolence. He asks if she wants to chill outside while he goes bowling, but she thinks that's a silly question and comes inside in a funny nod to the original game.
Why would I want to wait outside?
I'll wait here. I hate bowling.
He remarks on what kind of monster could eat pizza at a time like this, but James, let me tell you, I can eat pizza anytime, okay? So quit your judgmental shit. 6 more monsters outside are superbly smashed using melee, and they aren't the only ones getting that treatment.
I think I'm actually getting used to you smashing stuff up.
In a reference to Born from a Wish from the director's cut of the original, Maria gets uncomfortable outside of the Baldwin place, place, putting some hope out there that Bloober will remake that as well and release it as DLC. Just down the road, they find the street has somehow gone out, forcing them to find another way to the special place Maria has in mind. But some lying figures have caught up looking to get a little crazy. They bar the gate with James's favorite weapon thus far, but thankfully there's a much sturdier pipe right in front of him. The wind picks up and a slew of enemies emerge, and while James is a fantastic monster hunter, he knows his limits and doesn't want to endanger Maria. So they book it through various alleys and yards, putting down a single mannequin that was extra insistent on dying and finding safety beyond defense. They go through the back door of Heaven's Night, a strip club that clearly makes James uncomfortable when Maria teases the bowl.
What did he say?
He sarcastically asks if this is the special place, and she admits it's just a stop. But James don't want to stay here no mo, and wonders out loud if he's crazy for thinking Maria will be in this town. Maria calls it hopeful instead and offers up a drink, but James says no without saying a single word. Go back outside and into a garden that Maria believes could be special. She tells him about a local tale of love that ends in tragedy. An apt story not so far from James's, but it's not a place he recognizes. They hear a scream nearby and rush towards it, but the way forward is blocked and requires James to climb through a window. It's here Maria elects to stay behind by stating a major red flag.
Not much of a movie fan anyway.
Who the fuck doesn't like movies? James overhears Laura bullying Eddie about his weight, so James charges in to give her a piece of his mind. But she's gone by the time he arrives, and Eddie eats ice cream with his fucking hand. James is happy to see Eddie has his appetite back, but that comment makes him feel self-conscious, and he sets the bucket aside. James asks about Laura, and it's here he finally learns her name. He turns to leave and asks Eddie if he wants to come, but he's in that petty mood, and makes a remark about how now he wants Eddie's company. That queen ain't gonna eat itself, so Eddie stays back to snack in the darkness. James searches the theater, eventually following Laura to the entrance where she darts out and past Maria right into Brookhaven Hospital. They follow so James can question her about how she knows Mary, but she continues evading them and unlocks the door on the second floor. They search at the ground level and locate a way into the basement where James kickstarts the generator, and his adrenaline as he wails on several monstrosities to bump his body count up some more. They ride the elevator up and James looks out the window to see rain coming down, which activates Maria's seasonal affective disorder, and combined with James's non-interest has Maria so down bad she willingly lays down in dried piss and shit. James is disgusted at this and leaves her there to sleep in filth so he can continue looking for Laura. But all he finds are creepy, sexy nurses and violent patients he's forced into fighting. James continues his obsession with holes by climbing into one and falling down a level while trapped in between walls in a super claustrophobic moment that thankfully only lasts a few seconds since James realizes he can push the cabinet out of the way. James for a second forgets what franchise he's in until a prompt reminder yanks him back to reality. From there, James pushes his total kill count over 100 as he prowls the hospital corridors, solving puzzles to further open the map up until he locates the rooftop key. He promptly heads up there to wash some of this asbestos off himself while he experiences some deja vu, before getting his own face-to-face taste of Pyramid Head, who hucks James's ass backwards so hard he winds up exactly where he needs to be. James asks Laura why she's ducking him, and how she can even know who Mary is. He learns they were in the hospital together the year prior, which causes James to erupt in accusations that makes Laura separate herself from him. He stops her from running and thinks they should stick together due to the dangers present, but she hasn't seen any dangers around. She mentions a letter from Mary she needs to retrieve first, and tells James it's in this insanely suspicious room that she locks him into. She taunts him and refuses to let him out unless he says the magic word, but something is in the room and the squelchy sounds it's making are making James fearful. Laura leaves him there and forces him into a boss fight against this disgusting creature aptly named Flesh Lips. The fight itself drains all of his ammo and puts him in position to finish things off with a pipe for kill number 110. He admires his work after the fight ends, but gets snatched up and sent into another version of the hospital that's much darker and creepier. He wanders into a familiar location in the inner ward, but a box is heavily locked up and requires James to explore the building to find various keys and codes to unlock it, which results in a killing frenzy as James shoots, smashes, and stomps on nurses, mannequins, and lying figures strewn throughout the Otherworld hospital. After gathering the necessary details, James opens the box to find nothing! However, behind James another door is revealed, except this time in 3D. He notices the elevator button in her mouth and thinking that's an awful snack, he snatches it and descends into the lower level. The way down is much longer though, and that's because James finds himself in the middle of a game show that he's not able to participate in real time.
What the hell was that?
Soon after exiting the elevator, he's faced with 6 enemies in the basement that he puts down. Maria shows up feeling better, but she's quickly angered when James mistakes her for Mary and acts nonchalant about her sudden appearance. She complains about the monsters, but James knows he cleared out those levels, so she's just being dramatic. She calms down and asks about Laura, who managed to escape, so she urgently says they need to pursue her, and James questions her as to why. She admits she'd feel some responsibility towards her despite not knowing her at all, which is good enough reasoning for James. They get to the 3D door and James places rings on the woman's fingers to unlock it, but Maria is hesitant to go inside until James encourages her.
It's gonna be fine.
Spoilers? It won't, because that pyramid-headed motherfucker is here to stab something and Maria is it. Her sudden death sends James to his knees, but Mary ain't gonna find herself, so he pulls himself up by his bootstraps and keeps searching. He stops by the front office and finds the key to the front door, and through the open window spots Laura running into the night. James quickly follows, but the streets of Silent Hill are jam-packed with enemies for James to take down, adding another 23 kills to the tally. A tunnel reveals a new enemy, but James doesn't want to stick around and books it through to the other side, where even more monsters reside and meet their end courtesy of James Sunderland and his small arsenal of weapons. He hears a payphone ringing outside and answers it. After hanging up, a key is dispensed from the chain shitter, and James finds himself in yet another dark corridor with a strange enemy attacking from below. He escapes and makes it back to Rosewater Park, where he finds Angela standing in front of a statue. He inquires if she feels better, but she doesn't answer his stupid question because no one in this place can feel good. She mentions everything looks different than her memories, and James can relate pretty heavily with this. She expresses doubt that her mama even wants to see her, and James attempts to cheer her up by saying he's happy to see her. He asks if she's seen a little girl running around, and Angela goes, "Yeah, me!" He finds a box at the foot of the statue along with a note and a key pointing him towards the Historical Society. Inside, he finds a painting of a scary pal and thinks it's a bit odd. Directly after that, he encounters a long stairwell that seemingly takes ages to traverse. This brings James to Toluca Prison and another 2 kills. Hey, they weren't even on death row and James sent them there anyway. He also continues jumping down strange holes without question. After the second leap of faith, James runs into Eddie, who appears crazed. He talks about killing the guy at the table and provides different reasons for why he killed him, but he senses judgment emanating from James and says it was just jokes and leaves him there alone. The prison is where the game goes from scary to outright butthole puckering, due to the darkness swallowing the light from James's flashlight and the timer-based lighting system that briefly illuminates the cell blocks. Combine that with the mannequins that can now climb walls, scamper off, and are all champions of hide and seek, and that creates a perfect recipe for some good scares. There's a lot of back and forth as James gathers clues for puzzles and slowly opens the prison up. And as he does this, over the course of a couple hours, he encounters and kills 1 creeper, 7 nurses, 14 lying figures, and 32 mannequins to bump that total well into the 200 mark. In order to finally leave this place, James has to solve a riddle by selecting which prisoner was justified in their crime. If the wrong one is selected, then James gets dropped into a pit of monsters to fight, but not this time. Instead, he plunges into another hole so he can jump into not just 1, but 2 holes. An elevator takes him the rest of the way down, and he begins his adventure within the labyrinth. The labyrinth starts off with a bang, and what is the most depressing part of the game is James gets some background information on a man named Thomas Orozco. This doesn't make much sense now, but it does when Angela is found a minute later begging James to back her up about being good. James is suddenly attacked by one of the most wretched creature designs in gaming, and the boss fight against the abstract daddy begins. After dodging its attacks and a few pipe hits later, it melts into the ground, but it's not dead yet. This is far different but much improved from the original, as James now has to navigate a maze of hallways until he discovers the final boss arena. James dodges, ducks, dips, dives, and dodges his way to victory without taking a single hit and smacking that disgusting thing until it officially dies. Immediately following its death, Angela slams a TV on top of it for good measure, and James's attempts to simmer her down are met with hostility. By now, everyone knows her story, and it's one of the most heartbreaking ones in gaming. She's rightfully distrustful of men, and she acts out against James, hurting him in the process when she claims he probably didn't want Mary around no mo. She leaves him there in search of her mama while he contemplates her words.
I never
I bash Daddy some more before leaving and run into a creepy fucking corridor filled with arms of Hades. If only James had the Blades of Chaos here, he could just cut through them. He moves on for a hell of a surprise when he finds Maria trapped behind bars acting as if nothing ever happened. She brings up a videotape they left behind in the hotel, making James question who she really is. Maria claims she only wants to be with him, and you can tell just how difficult this is on James as his mind fights with itself on whether to give in to her or keep going. We have plenty of game left though, so he turns around and issues a promise to get her out of that cell. He finds a strange box outside that controls the larger one in front of him. There are 3 required levels in this area to move forward, and James starts with the rotten area. There's only 6 enemies that go down within it, but the biggest annoyance is the mandarins that explore much of the maze. And it ends exactly how you'd expect, with James jumping down that hole. The second area he opens up is called the Desolate area, which is an apt name for it because James brings the desolation to this maze with 15 more kills. But his combat supremacy is quickly knocked down a peg when Pyramid Head pops up looking for a piece. But James outpaces him and escapes his big sword by, you guessed it, jumping down a hole. The third maze is a series of combat challenges. The first 2 rooms are timed, and if not all enemies are killed by the end, then they just die anyway. So he misses out on some kills in favor of saving resources, but he still nabs 5 of them in the process. The final challenge does not have a timer and puts James in a room with 2 mandarins that can only be shot through the floor, but after a few rounds they both fall, along with the lone mannequin who was tripping balls in here the whole time. Just when James is feeling good about himself, Pyramid Head again shows up to bring him down to earth, and a narrow corridor with creepy hands is blocking him from just outrunning the executioner. He slowly backs up, avoiding the sword when necessary until things change around him into something more ordinary. He goes through the lone door to find himself in a cell with Maria, who has died a second time. He mourns her for a minute, but then realizes that ain't his Mary and leaves. He goes back into the main chamber to find the giant cube is now gone, with Pyramid Head's sword jutting out of the rubble. He pulls the sword from the stone, and as if it's 2001 again, the controls suddenly tank. He uses it to traverse the handsy corridor that takes him to a small graveyard with a few familiar names. One foreshadows a future game, while the 3 next to each other show Angela, Eddie, and finally James, who sees another hole he's just itching to dive into. It takes him to a dark hallway that leads into another meeting with an even more unhinged Eddie. Again, meeting him right after he killed someone, James endures a short monologue from Eddie, who is clearly dealing with his own bullying issues in an unhealthy way. James attempts to calm him down, but instead gets the gun shoved in his face, so James reacts with violence and socks Eddie in the face. He tells him he needs help, but Eddie doesn't want his judgment and claims they're the same since they're both stuck in this town. He scurries into the next room, and James looks over the dead bodies piled up in here. Perhaps a little alarmed they all look like him. But inside the next room, James is forced into a confrontation with Eddie, and man, I really enjoyed this boss fight. Playing this cat and mouse game with Eddie was tense as hell. But of course it culminates in a James Sunderland victory as Eddie tries to run off as the final bullet nails him through the fog. James looks down at his hands in disbelief that he just killed his first human.
Right.
He exits out the back door and hops in a rowboat that takes him to the Lakeview Hotel. The hotel is very quiet when he first arrives, and he remarks on how it hasn't changed at all in 3 years, and luckily, there's a note that tells James exactly where his videotape is located. The interior is very familiar to any that have been to the Stanley Hotel, but I won't tell James that and continue exploring the place until he runs into Laura. She's far more friendly towards him now, and that's because she believes Mary is somewhere close by and she needs James's help to find her. She decides to show James her letter from Mary, and it becomes obvious that her childhood innocence interprets it differently than James does. It was meant for Laura after Mary's passing, but she hyper-focuses on the quiet, beautiful place she claims to be in, and believes it to be here in Silent Hill. The letter ends with Mary wishing Laura a great life and a happy 8th birthday. James asks Laura when her birthday is and learns it was just last week, bringing into question his memory of events. Laura also has a letter for James, but when he opens the envelope, nothing is inside. Laura panics and runs off to find it, opening up the eastern side of the hotel where James can get violent again and vacate this wing of the building for 31 more kills as he pushes his kill count over 300. He searches for and locates 3 different Disney princesses, but is suddenly interrupted by the world's calmest Disney adult. This marks the first time a Mandarin comes face to face with James, and boy does it regret that decision. Afterward, he accesses the employee section, but the elevator has a very strict weight limit that results in James offloading all of his belongings. After killing off over 300 monsters, James is suddenly defenseless, making this section of the hotel far more stress-inducing as he sneaks around the patrolling mandarins. He grabs the videotape and uses the key taped to it to get back to the lobby and gather his supplies back. Afterwards, he solves the music box puzzle and can finally access the 3rd floor where he and Mary stayed during their vacation. The room looks ordinary and contains a VCR he uses to play the videotape. It starts off happy, with Mary expressing how much she loves it here, but it turns sour real quick when she coughs and the tape gets snuffy, like James is playing Manhunt. We quickly find out that's the case when he places a pillow over Mary's face and begins smothering her, making her kill number 307 on the count, but making her kill number 1 for James personally. This revelation shatters James to his core as the tape shuts off and he sits there in disbelief. Laura enters asking if he found Mary, and James admits she's been killed by his own hands. Laura hits him and screams at him before running off. Now that James knows the truth, we see the hotel differently now. But he doesn't wait long before Mary cries for his help over the radio. Worried he may not get another chance, James jumps through a hole to descend a level and finds the hotel is now abandoned, except for Angela. She mistakes James for her mama, but soon realizes he's not and thanks him for his help earlier, but wishes he didn't interfere. She has been made to believe she deserved all the awful things that happened to her by her own family, and James attempts to tell her otherwise. But she lays into him, sarcastically asking if he's going to save her, love her, and heal her pain. She demands the knife back, but knowing what she wants to use it for, James refuses. So instead, she turns around and climbs the stairs into the fire. James remarks on how hot it is, and Angela says the phrase that wraps up her intensely sad story so well.
You see it too? For me, it's always like this.
She walks into the fire, and James turns around to leave, noticing enemies dying off on their own. He locates the final save marker of the game with the 9 squares representing the various enemies he's faced throughout the game. He goes through the doors nearby to find Maria alive again, but this time strapped upside down and flanked by 2 pyramid heads. James, confused by this setup, doesn't recall clicking on this video, but isn't mad about it, at least until they stab her another way and kill her yet again. James does the Super Saiyan yell, but if it was Mary instead of Maria, he'd probably complete the transformation here. Instead, he maintains his current form and tells the Pyramid Bros he doesn't need them anymore and to fuck off. This starts the final confrontation with the Executioners, but despite putting in all the work, James doesn't kill them himself. Instead, after they take enough damage, they take matters into their own hands and do it to themselves. He proceeds onwards, enduring memories of Mary's anger after being diagnosed with her deadly disease. He climbs a few flights of stairs and finds what appears to be Mary. She turns around and he's quick to embrace her, but when she says they can be together forever, he snaps back to reality. Knowing she's gone, there's no way for that to happen. And while he appreciates Maria's efforts, the real Mary is dead and nothing will ever change that. Maria refuses to give up though.
What else do you want me to be?
How about die? She suddenly turns into a monster and James whittles her down until she can do nothing but lay there motionless until James ends her for good. It immediately cuts to James sitting next to Mary's bedside. She's over there looking like the T-virus is taking over and James apologizes for what he did. She says she wanted the pain to end and sees it as a favor, but he admits he didn't do it for her, and instead did it selfishly because he wanted her gone. Despite hearing that, Mary acts with compassion and understands why, and assures him it's okay before handing over a letter. This initiates the ending with Mary's incredibly sad voiceover telling James that she's sorry for getting sick, taking her anger out on him, and making him hate her in the process. But regardless of all that, she never traded in because he made her so happy. We watch as James and Laura take their sweet-ass motherfucking time leaving the town together, seemingly moving on with their lives. If you liked this video, consider hitting that thumbs up and subscribing to the channel for more video game content. And that is where Silent Hill 2 ends. There's a total of 8 different endings to the game, but only 3 are achievable in a first playthrough. I got the leave ending, but if you get in water, then you can tack on another kill to the final tally. No other ending will add any more kills outside of that one. Bloober included 2 new endings and both are bangers. Bliss is depressing as fuck, with James still unable to accept his sins and seemingly relinquishing himself to Silent Hill forever. The Stillness ending is my absolute favorite, however, and is my personal canon choice for the game. It's the closest we can get to a happy ending in a relentlessly bleak game. James accepts his actions, gains Mary's forgiveness for them, and lays her to rest in the place she loves so much. The audio cue makes it sound as if he bails from the car before it plunges into water, indicating James can now move on and continue with his life. Let me know your thoughts on the new endings in the comments. points. But for me, I finished Silent Hill 2 Remake with 308 kills altogether. I preferred melee weapons over firearms, with 56.17% of my kills coming from the pipe, wooden board, or James's heel, but the pipe made up 105 of those kills on its own. Those freaky little mannequins made up just over 38% of the total kills, and I died a grand total of 0 times, which gives James a hell of a kill-death ratio. In total, it took me 16 hours and 15 minutes to finish the game, which gives us a kill on average every 3.17 minutes. Comparing this to the original game, I ended that playthrough with a total of 103 kills, which makes sense since 20 years of experience is bound to pay off, right? Thankfully, Bloober nailed this remake, and I hope to see them in charge of the eventual Silent Hill 1 and 3 remakes. But until then, I'm moving on to the Mafia games as requested by you guys. In the meantime, thanks as always for watching. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.